speech, that I wasn't going to try to make it perfect. This is a hard task for me because I am a perfectionist. My teachers can tell you that sometimes I will hand in something late just because I wasn't satisfied with it yet. But all I can do is tell you what I know, and I will try my best to do so. My first true memory was from when I was 2 or 3 years old. I was on the blacktop dancing with Henry Edwards. It was nighttime and he had a beard. That is all I remember. I was a part of Burgundy before I was born. My oldest sister Elizabeth started transition 4 years before I was even born, and when I started kindergarten, she was already in 8th grade. My family's connection to the school has always been a strong one, with my dad's chili ever present at the fall fair, and my mom's work as a room parent, substitute, and as a teacher for almost a year, not to mention the many hours both of them have spent on the board over the past 18 years. I know that because of these things, my family will still be a part of Burgundy even after there are no more Evans girls going to school here. As my sisters experienced their times here, I watched in anticipation, knowing, but not entirely realizing, that I would someday do those things also. I remember many times when Margaret went to the Cove and I stayed home, waiting and wishing for my first trip to come. I went to middle school plays and watched Margaret and her friends get ready for dances, knowing that they were having a great time and waiting for it to be my turn. When the time came for them to graduate, I listened as they talked about what it would be like to leave their friends and move on to high school. Just like my family at home, my class has become family to me. We have grown up together and learned together. When we were younger, we looked up to the middle school students, just like I looked up to my sisters when I was that age. As we have gotten older, we realize that the younger students look up to us and know that someday they will be where we are now. This year has been full of many lasts for us, but when they happened, we never really thought of them that way. Our last Cove trip in the fall didn't feel like the last until we left with the journals that many of us have been writing in since first grade. Taking those journals home was something that I had never thought about before that day, and now that it sits in my room, it reminds me that I will never be at the Cove with my entire class again, and that scares me a little bit. But the Cove trip was not our only last this year. In the fall, right before Thanksgiving, we celebrated our last Grandparents' and Special Friends Day. When it finally sunk in that there would be no more Grandparents' Days, I couldn't believe it, since I can remember the first one I was a part of when I was in kindergarten. In December, we had our Festival of Lights program. The thing about doing all these things is that we never knew what it would feel like until we were up there. When we finally got to be the class that gets to sit in the chairs on the side of the gym instead of on the floor with the rest of the school. I didn't feel as cool as all the classes before us seemed. It seems that our views of the world have expanded so that the simple things that seemed so huge before really aren't what we expected. Not everything we did this year was the last, though. We had our first pizza sales in the fall before we knew what we were doing and if it would all work out, which they did, and planning the dances for the first time. We didn't know anything about that in the fall, but by last week when we were setting up for our last dance, we knew how to deal with anything, even broken lights. About a month ago, we put on our last production at Burgundy in the form of our 8th grade musical, Cindy Ella. This play ended what for many of us was a long run of plays and skits we had performed in our time at Burgundy. For me, this run started in kindergarten when we did the 3 Billy Goats Gruff in music class. On my first day of kindergarten, I walked into the room clinging onto my dad. When I sat down at the table, I started playing with Play-Doh. I guess you could consider that my first class. This week, we have all been to our last classes at Burgundy. We went to our last LA class where we talked about our autobiographies, our last math classes, and our last science class in which we finished our rockets. Since our trip to Wilderness Adventure, our social studies class has been devoted to making our film. This leaves us with our Spanish and French classes. Now I know not everyone in our class was taking a foreign language this year, and I can't speak for the students in French and in Andrea's Spanish class. But for me, my last 48 minutes of Tony's Spanish class was one of the hardest periods ever. Our class has been together with Tony since the fall of 7th grade. We had many fun times with her, even when she got angry at us for not doing our homework, or she would try to act like she didn't like the songs and dances Nancy Walker made up to get her attention. We all know that she truly loved them, she just didn't want to admit it. When she would make us bring in a bag of chips for every time we spoke in English, or told us that we would have to come eat lunch with her, we would usually just laugh about it. Sometimes Tony would say something so funny, we would all be in hysterics and she wouldn't be able to hold our attention for the rest of the class time. We have had a great time because of the amazing people that make up every class we have here. Whether it's the students singing during class or the teachers who try to settle us down but just end up laughing along with us to the point that there is no hope for us to get anything done that period. We are constantly enjoying ourselves. And if we weren't, we wouldn't have been able to make it to this day. It is because we are allowed to have fun that we are able to learn so much. Everyone you see in front of you is important for our family here at Burgundy. If it weren't for the people up here with me today, we would all be different than we are now. We take care of each other when someone isn't feeling well and always have our arms open to embrace someone when they are in need of a hug. We joke around together and with our teachers. There aren't many schools where your teacher gets on the tables at lunch and starts dancing while singing songs from Jesus Christ Superstar. Or where an entire grade makes custom shirts to celebrate your teacher's birthday. As a group, we make each other who we are and help one another to grow. I told you in the beginning of this speech that I was going to tell you what I know, and I did. But this is what I have learned. No matter how hard you try, you will never reach someone else's idea of perfection. Try your best to be the best you can, and when you get there, you have reached what for you is perfect. As you move on, use what you have learned, but more importantly, take what you know and use it to get through to the next step, working forward on your journey to your perfection.